There are reports that the two sides of the war are working on a peace deal on a major point for the Russians, assurances that Ukraine will not join NATO and will remain neutral. But in his speech to Congress today, Zelenskyy suggested the world form a new military alliance.
An association, U24, United for Peace, a union of responsible countries that have the strength and consciousness to stop conflicts immediately.
U24, an organization Zelenskyy said would provide immediate military and humanitarian aid to a member country as needed. But that sounds a lot like NATO, a not so subtle way of getting around joining NATO, perhaps. Form another military alliance to evade Russia's demands. Well, joining us now is Luliia Mendel, former spokesperson for President Zelenskyy. Luliia, thank you for joining us. We love having you on here. Zelenskyy made a very compelling speech to as many members of Congress that decided to show up. He got a very long-standing ovation. And just shortly thereafter, President Biden decided to turn over another $800 million. I'm not sure, is that what you need? Do you need more money, or do you need airplanes and surface-to-air missiles and more military equipment?
Eric, thank you for having me. Ukraine needs the security and safety of its people most of all right now. It's not like we are not grateful for all the support of American people. Definitely, we are very grateful for all the financial, humanitarian support, but there is a military hesitance there. We understand that. Probably NATO showed itself as not quite a strong organization that can cope with such types of conflict these days. And I see that Volodymyr Zelenskyy has frustration and disappointment in the behavior of the allies, because he was pretty clear when he said that European countries that are bordering Ukraine are not sure that NATO will not be afraid to defend them if Russia starts attacking these countries. And right now, Volodymyr Zelenskyy has changed his narrative and mostly talking that there is a necessity to find new formats to guarantee the security of people. We are very grateful for this $1 billion of support. This is very important for us, as the latest announcement of $13.6 billion. But the latest what I've heard from Prime Minister of Ukraine is that now the devastation of the country will cost, the renewal of the country will cost around $256 billion. And we're talking only about reconstruction. We're not talking right now about Russians just killing us. We don't talk about the price of democracy and the price of people's lives. You showed these devastations in Mariupol today. There were hundreds of people hiding in the theater, people who lost their homes. They were hiding there with their families, trying to find at least some security in the city that is blocked by Russians, where Russians do not allow to have even a drop of water, any humanitarian aid. This is suffering that doesn't have any price. So the question, if you say, do we need money? Thank you for money. We are really grateful, but much more needs to be done. We need to be safe. Yeah. We need to stop killing civilians and Ukrainians. This is the major thing that Volodymyr Zelenskyy asks from President Biden and American people.
Luliia, you know, President Zelenskyy today in his address to Congress said something, he had a wonderful speech, Churchill-like speech, fantastic. But he said something, he said World War III may have already have started. What do you think he meant by that?
In this part of the world, the threat of Russia looks differently than from other side of the ocean. And we understand that our neighbors, they are pretty much concerned. You know, Putin is a monkey with a grenade. If Western countries try not to irritate him so that he doesn't drop or throw this grenade, it's not going to work out, because Putin and the monkey will find any kind of the irritant to throw or drop this grenade anywhere. He has such a deep disrespect to the Western world order that he does not take care much about any kinds of memberships, NATO membership or the EU membership. There can be Moldova first. She is not any kind of membership, but Poland has increased its army 3 times because they understand easily that Putin can go further. The Baltic states are afraid very much. And of course, there are other countries who suffered a lot from Russia, like, for instance, Belarusian people and Georgia and Kazakhstan and many, many other countries. So the issue is that Putin is unstoppable right now. There is no any reason that we can say he will stop on Ukraine. If you hear me, Putin was called today a war criminal. I must add.
Go ahead. Finish that thought.
Putin already was called today a war criminal. I must say any kind of the bad word you can think of, it's Putin. Putin is a war criminal. Putin is a terrorist. Putin is a bastard. Putin is the worst evil in the world. So right now, it's time to stop him in Ukraine.